Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Valean, Executive Editor with Commercial Property Executive, and this is Crew Up, CP's quarterly podcast series featuring leaders from the Crew Network community. For decades, Brokerage has carried the reputation of being one of the most competitive and male-dominated corners of commercial real estate. But the industry has evolved, with more women stepping into brokerage roles over the years and reshaping what success in the business looks like. Their influence is undeniable, particularly in the way they navigate client relationships, negotiations, and long-term deal-making. What unique strengths do women bring to the table? We'll find out together over the next few minutes. I'm joined by Leslie Teskey, a longtime commercial real estate broker and the 2026 president of Crew Network. Hi, Leslie. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the big picture. Crew's latest benchmark study shows women still make up only about a third of brokers. What's the story behind that percentage? And what are people getting wrong when they interpret it?
I think it's really how you look at those numbers. It's really kind of the glass half full or the glass half empty. So we have gained 10% over the last 15 years in terms of percentage of women in brokerage roles. So that is a significant gain. So if you look at that, I think the 31% is actually more optimistic than it looks when you think, oh, it's only a third of the percentage of brokers. And if you also look at the historical context, if you think back, so the Crew Network was founded in 1989. Just the year before that, women were, for the first time ever, able to take out business loans without a cosigner from their spouse or their father. So we started at a very different place when we first started the Crew Network than men were. And so I think we just had to look at progress versus perfection of getting where we want to be. But we are making progress. Is it slower than we want? Yes. But women in brokerage is still the fastest growing sector in commercial real estate. So it's optimistic, and I'm hopeful that it continues to grow over the next 5 years, and we'll be curious about the next benchmark study.
We seem to be talking a lot about participation, but we don't talk that often about power. Is there any data about how many women are actually founding or leading brokerage firms?
That's not something that we actually track in the Crew Network benchmark study. We do track women in C-suite roles. And unfortunately, that percentage has remained at about 9% for the past 20 years. So that is discouraging. However, we did notice a trend or kind of a pivot in the way women are thinking about their roles coming out of COVID. More and more women are making the choice to become entrepreneurs or start their own firm because, they realize what's important to them coming out of COVID, and they want to have more, autonomy and just flexibility and freedom in their lives. So I think that that's an interesting trend that we're seeing, but again, we don't actually track those numbers. One thing that has been encouraging is Cushman & Wakefield did name a female CEO in 2023, Michelle McKay. So that is very encouraging because for a long time, especially in the brokerage world and the big brokerage shops, it's been very much the old boys club.
Right. What are the unique skills you'd say women bring to brokerage that the industry has underestimated, historically speaking?
I don't know if I would call them unique skills because I hate labeling anything too absolute in terms of this is all what women do and this is what men do. But speaking in generalities, I think women are better listeners. People want to be heard. And so we have the ability to be quiet and listen to what our clients want and need, rather than us going into a pitch or a presentation and telling them what we can do for them and who we are. So that's a unique approach that I think is more often than not is different. I think we tend to be a bit more empathetic. And again, that goes back to the listening and leaning in and trying to want to help solve problems for our clients. So that can be kind of a difference maker for women in brokerage.
Because many people think there's a paradox here. So women have all these unique skills, these strengths, all these strong relationship building, negotiation, and strategic thinking skills that they bring to the industry. So why aren't we seeing them dominate brokerage?
Because it's a hard field to get into. First off, it's a really tough field, male or female. It's tough to get into this industry. It's tough to make it through your first couple of years to where you can actually earn a living. And then if you look around, and again, it historically has been an old boys club at brokerage shops, So if they're run by, say, old white men, they tend to be more inclined to hire people that look like them. So they are hiring, more of the young white men that look like them. So it is just a harder barrier of entry. Women are more risk averse. There's a lot of risk that goes into brokerage because most often you have no salary. So you're going into this job not making any money, and that is scary when you have to just, eat what you kill. And so it takes somebody that is, I would say, more confident and willing to take that leap in order to get into brokerage. And again, you have to also figure out a way to how to survive the first couple of years until you can start making it. But then once you do, I do know a lot of women that are highly successful in brokerage. It's just that barrier to entry and getting your career ramped up is the challenging part.
Right. Right. And on top of that, women who do make it in this industry often talk about that imposter syndrome, especially in high stakes deals. How does that show up, and how do the most successful women push through it?
I loved kind of talking about imposter syndrome because I listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of books about it, honestly. And it's something that so many people face. And I think more often than not, women also think they're the only ones. Men do face imposter syndrome as well. And a lot of it has to stem with people that are high achieving and perfectionists. We want to be the very best, and we worry that people are going to find out we're not actually the very best. So how you get through that, actually, I go back to, she's a journalist, Katty Kay, wrote the book Confidence Code. And that was, I think, the first time I'd actually heard the term of imposter syndrome. And her takeaway is just fake it until you become it. So if you walk into a room and, you have to kind of play the role of being confident and that you belong there, eventually, you do. And when you start to feel that, I found that you just have to look at the facts. Look at what you bring to the table. You know what you're capable of. You know what you've done. And so you kind of have to talk yourself up a little bit when it starts creeping in. And again, it creeps into everyone at every single stage. But if you pause and look at, I know who I am. I know what I can do. And then that kind of helps you work through that.
Yeah, you build a bit more confidence, and all things go smoothly from that point on.
Yes.
Have you personally experienced moments where being a woman in brokerage was treated as a disadvantage, but ultimately became a strength?
Yeah, there have been moments throughout my career where things have been challenging specifically because I've been a female. I've had early in my career where, another broker said that he wasn't even going to work with me. He would just work directly with my client because he would only talk to the male. I've also experienced some cultural differences because there are certain cultures that are less inclined to want to work with women, which is challenging. So I've learned how to overcome that. I also have a male business partner, so there have been times where he has to take the lead, and we recognize that. There are times when I take the lead because sometimes we walk into the room, there's also cultural differences, or people may not want to work with a male, and they actually do prefer working with a female that's going to listen to them and be responsive. So you really just have to, like I said before, listen, understand your clients, understand the requirements that you're working on to figure out the best way to address that.
You said earlier that brokerage still feels like an old boys club. What are the real structural barriers that still make brokerage harder for women today? You touched upon some of them, but maybe you can dive deeper into that.
Some of it has to go with just the gender roles that many of us still face while we're trying to build these careers and do all these things that the men are doing at night at home. Oftentimes, you're still the primary caregiver for your children. And so even if you're in a relationship where both partners work and have similar incomes, et cetera, the female often does become the primary caregiver. And so that can be challenging as well, because especially depending on the company you're working with, if you have to miss for whatever reason, that can be frowned upon. And so women may face that as a challenge when trying to grow their career. So I think that is just ongoing. And then if you get into a certain generation, kind of that sandwich generation, that are also now caring for aging parents as well as children, it becomes even more challenging to juggle all the things that we're trying to take care of as the caretakers. So I think that can be very challenging for many women as they build their career, because they want to be a mom, but they also want to have a career, and trying to figure out how to do both well. Sometimes it's impossible.
Right. Who would you say are the women who've truly changed the game in brokerage? Is there anyone who made you personally believe this path was possible?
Unfortunately, when I got into this career, I didn't have a mentor or somebody that I could aspire to. There just weren't a ton of women in commercial real estate brokerage. in my firm or that I had access to. So speaking of generalities, I think it really is a lot of the women of the Crew Network. So the women that came together in 1989 to found this network, I think those are the women, and the women that have come after them that have held the door open for the next generation. Looking at the Crew Network, we have mentorship programs in place now. So if I were starting out as a broker now, I would actually have access to mentors and sponsors and people that would help me navigate that. That's one of the reasons I am just so passionate about the Crew Network, is because I hope that women starting their careers in brokerage don't face some of those same challenges and have the resources and have the mentors and sponsors. So I do make a point, if I meet any young female brokers in my market, even if they work for other firms, I try to have coffee with them and just talk to them and just give them any guidance I can, that it's okay. And it is hard, and everyone thinks it's hard, and that's okay. But again, I go back to just all those women that have come before me. There's many of them that put in the work to do this. Again, like the Crew Network, it's a volunteer role. So these women were already juggling their demanding careers, lives, et cetera. And then they took the time, the resources to put together this incredible network just to make things better for the next generation.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier work-life balance, and brokerage is known for its intensity, but also for the so-called flexibility and autonomy. Is that flexibility real, or is it more of a myth?
Oh, absolutely. So my own personal story, I got into commercial real estate brokerage. I have twin daughters who are actually almost 19 now. But when they were born, I was working for corporate America in a finance role. And that role had no flexibility. I was going to be downtown 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. My kids were going to be in daycare for 10 plus hours a day. I made the choice that that's not how I wanted to parent my children. And that's when I left that role. 6 months later, I got into commercial real estate brokerage. And while, yes, it is challenging, you do have to do the work. You have to put in the hours. I did have that flexibility where if my child was sick, there were days I was sitting at home with somebody's head on my lap while I was working on my laptop on on my couch. So I had the flexibility to actually be a present parent, but also have the career. Now it's not free. There are nights, there are days where you're doing whatever you're doing, coaching the cross country team, et cetera. But that means you're doing things at night once your kids go to bed, because again, you still have to do the work, but it lets you do it on your terms where you can be present, you can do what is important to you, but you can also have a very successful career.
What would you say makes this career rewarding for women?
First off, I think it's fun. I'm a highly competitive person by nature. And so I love that I get to, delve into that in my day job. I love that it's, you can get the resources you need. I became a single mom when my girls were young, pretty early into my career. And I was thinking, how in God's name am I going to do this? Well, you go do it. You go find the deals. You get what you need to earn a living, to support yourself, to support your family. And that's what I love about it, is because the possibilities are absolutely endless based on what you're willing to do and how hard you're willing to work to meet your goals.
And do you think younger women entering commercial real estate today have a fundamentally different experience than women did 10 or 20 years ago? Has the culture changed in any way?
Absolutely. I think, first off, young women are different than, say, I was, coming out of college, et cetera. I look at my own daughters, again, they just graduated high school, and they and their friends are the most confident, they know what they bring to the table at a young age. And I'm always blown away by how confident these young women are. And so I think generationally, these women are coming out smarter than I ever was at a young age. And then, culturally, things have changed. The old boys club has shifted. I know women not that much older than me, when they got into brokerage, they would get in trouble at work because they weren't wearing pantyhose, or if their pantyhose had a run in them, things like that. And that wasn't that long ago. So yes, things have changed dramatically. They talked about seeing, all the girly calendars in people's cubes, things like that. Obviously, we've become a much more PC world. And so some of those things have changed, and things that, were acceptable in, the 80s or early 90s are absolutely not acceptable anymore. And so I think that, just the overall landscape has changed for women getting into brokerage. And there are more senior type women in brokerage that can sponsor and advocate for these young women as they get into these roles where, say 25 years ago, that just wasn't the case. And so you just had to try to speak up for yourself, but you were the only woman in the room, in every single room.
But is now actually a good time for women to enter brokerage, given today's market uncertainty and all the transformations in the industry?
I think so. I mean, there's always going to be roles for commercial real estate brokers. There are a lot of business, there's tons of business to go around. You have to go out and find its sources, build your own relationships. But absolutely, you can have control of your future, just the ability of the sky's the limit on earnings potential if you're willing to put in the time and work, especially young women, if you're getting out of college and you don't have other responsibilities. And you can just devote the time needed to build your book of business and build your career. I think it's always going to be a great time to get into commercial real estate brokerage if you're the right person. If you have, the drive to make it work, the work ethic to put in the long hours to build your network, et cetera. But I think it's always going to be a great time.
So looking ahead, Leslie, what gives you optimism about the future? You mentioned you were optimistic, an optimistic woman, and you've always been optimistic. What gives you optimism about the future of women in commercial real estate brokerage? What will it take to move from 1/3 to true parity?
I think it's just, again, the abilities of these young women that are entering the real estate market or entering the career force. I think there's more resources than there have ever been. Again, the Crew Network is up to 15,000 members globally. So women that are entering into commercial real estate, they have a network waiting for them should they choose to reach out and join the Crew Network. And again, that's only grown over time. So I think that the resources are more ample than they've ever been for women entering the commercial real estate industry. Again, I think that the just overall environment for women in business in general has gotten so much better that women can be highly successful in any field they want to be in, including commercial real estate. So I'm just optimistic for that. And more women are kind of shifting that mindset. I think people used to have the opinion that women didn't want other women to succeed. They would kind of, put down other women, but I don't know very many women like that. The women in my world, they want to elevate women. They want to reach their hand back. They want to see anyone and say, what can I do? How can I help you? Like, let me be here for you. And I think that paradox has shifted dramatically. And so I think, again, I'm optimistic for the future, the industry in general, but specifically for women entering into commercial real estate brokerage.
Leslie, this was such a thoughtful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your experiences with everyone listening.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Crew Up. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to hear more insights from commercial real estate industry experts, make sure to follow CPE Podcasts on your favorite platform. That's where you'll find all of Commercial Property Executive's podcast series, including Crew Up. You can also stay up to date with the latest news, trends, and analysis at cpexecutive.com. Thanks for joining. Till next time.